Okay, operations with radical expressions. As long as you can simplify this, won't be too bad for you guys. The thing that you need to know is that just like with adding anything, we must have like terms. So, for instance, if we were adding 2x plus 3y plus 4x, it's up on the top right here that I'm writing, what would that simplify to? Well, the x's can combine to 6x plus 3y, and that's where we stop. So we added the coefficients 2 and 4 to get 6, and we kept the x. So let's keep that in mind when we're looking at radicals. So example 1, add and subtract the expressions with like radicands. So that means that we're looking at radical 6 and the other radical 6, those are alike. So 10 radical 6 minus negative 4 radical 6 there I'm looking at. 10 radical 6 minus 4 radical 6 is 6 radical 6. And now let's look at the radical 3's. So negative 5 radical 3 plus 6 radical 3 is positive 1 radical 3. And that's our final answer because both of those are already simplified. Now when I look at example 2, I already see here, let me expand this for you. In example 2, the radical 12 is not simplified. So I need to go ahead and simplify that first. So that would be like 2 times 6, for instance, and 6 is 2 times 3. And the pair of 2's is coming out with that 3. So 2 times 3 is 6 radical, and then there was the 3 left over. And same thing for 5 radical 75. Let's simplify 75. Well, that's 25 times 3. And then 25 is 5 times 5. So the pair of 5's is coming out, being multiplied to that 5. So that's 25 radical 3. And now I have like terms. 6 radical 3 and 25 radical 3 is 31 radical 3. If there were no like terms, we would have just left it. Okay, now here we're multiplying, but this is FOIL. This is a binomial times a binomial. So when I look at the first, 3 radical 2 times 4 radical 20. Remember that we're multiplying the coefficients, the numbers in front of the radicand, basically. 3 times 4 is 12, and then that would give me radical 40. 20 times 2 is 40. And I know that I'm going to simplify that eventually, but let's keep going with FOIL first. So now I'm looking at outer. 3 radical 2 times radical 8. Well, that's 3, because it was like 3 times 1 basically. And then radical 2 times radical 8 is radical 16. Again, I know I'm going to simplify that when I get there. And then let's look at inner. Negative 2 radical 5 times 4 radical 20. Well, that's negative 8 radical 100. Again, that's going to be simplified. And then last, that would be negative 2 radical 5 times radical 8. So that's going to get me negative 2 times 1 is negative 2, and radical 5 times radical 8 is radical 40. Simplified. Okay, so where do I want to begin? Let's simplify this red one first. Radical 40, that's going to be like 8 times 5, and 8 is 4 times 2, and 4 is 2 times 2. So I see a pair of 2's that's coming out here to multiply to the 12. So that's 24 radical, and then I had a 2 times 5 left, so that's 10. So it's 24 radical 10. Okay, now I'm going to simplify 3 radical 16. Well, radical 16, if you already know, the square root of 16 is 4. So I'm just going to go ahead and do 3 times 4 to save time. So that's 12. Okay, radical 100, well, I know that that's 10, so I'm just going to multiply that by 10, so that's negative 80. And then last, I'm going to simplify the radical 40 again. If you already remember, the pair of 2's is coming out, and the 10 would be left over. So I'm going to multiply this by 2 after, but let's just do it to make sure. So 8 times 5, 8 is 4 times 2, the 4 is 2 times 2, this pair of 2's comes out right here, and the leftover is 10, so it becomes negative 4 radical 10. And now combine like terms. So 24 radical 10 and negative 4 radical 10 are like terms, and so that leaves me with 20 radical 10. And then 12 minus 80 is 68, negative 68. And that's my final answer.